Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, April 12th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma, in for Maya Trabulsi. For the 7th time this year, an inmate has died while in custody of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. The agency has been under scrutiny since a state audit found inmate deaths at county jails rank among the highest in the state. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has more on the calls for change.
Civil rights leaders met with interim Sheriff Anthony Ray this morning to talk about the high number of in-custody deaths. The meeting was planned even before the latest death on Monday.
Going to jail should not be a death sentence. And that is what I told the sheriff, and that is what I asked the sheriff to think about when he goes home at night.
Shane Harris is the president of the People's Association of Justice Advocates. He said he pressed the interim sheriff to endorse the Saving Lives in Custody Act. That's legislation that would make the department put in place recommendations made by a state audit that found the department had among the highest death rates of all county jails, and it failed to prevent and address the deaths.
The fact that we just had a 7th death in the county jails yesterday demonstrates the urgent need now.
He also asked the sheriff to release the body camera footage from the death and all in-custody deaths faster.
We need to see a very expedient way of getting answers to families.
An independent report commissioned by the Citizens Overview Law Review Board, just released on Friday, shows, based on population, San Diego County jails have the highest number of excess deaths and people who died without being sentenced.
At such a level, and it's such a concern, that I think areas of additional research should be done to really drill down into the why.
Paul Parker is the president of that civilian oversight group. He has proposed for the jails to allow county or independent jurisdiction over those providing medical and mental health care in the jails.
I think right there then, if we could have that, we would then get the whole picture of the deaths that are occurring and be able to better recommend changes.
He says this issue should matter to everyone.
Many of these folks are not convicted of anything, and many of these folks are either experiencing homelessness or experiencing mental health issues or addiction issues. And these are the issues that need to be addressed right now in an attempt to save someone's life. They're not throwaway people.
The board will meet tonight and discuss the findings of the report. Meanwhile, Harris says he expects the sheriff to back that bill before it goes into committee. We reached out to the sheriff's department for comment. They declined. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
A Ukrainian military official says as many as 22,000 people may have been killed in Mariupol. It's the latest estimate as the city remains surrounded and under siege by Russian forces. Mike Valerio has more.
As Russian tanks move through Mariupol, smoke billowing above the ruins, a Ukrainian military official now says up to 22,000 people may have died in the city. Those who survived described their homes turned into a hellscape.
All the buildings, including ours, our 9-story building, and all the buildings were destroyed or had holes in them. There were dead bodies in the streets.
You've seen the images yourself. You've seen the devastation that Russian airstrikes have wrought on Mariupol and the city. But our assessment is that the Ukrainians are still fighting for it.
American and Ukrainian officials have not confirmed recent reports of a possible Russian chemical attack on Mariupol. Meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin said today that peace talks with Ukraine are now at, quote, a dead end.
I have no doubt the objectives are clear and the objectives are noble. I said that at the very beginning. I draw your attention to the fact that in my very first speech, in my address to the nation and the army, I stated the objectives.
Those objectives, Putin suggested, are now narrowed to focus on the Donbass region rather than occupying all of Ukraine. The country's First Lady, Olena Zelenska, spoke through an interpreter, telling CNN how she and her family continue through the atrocities.
It's like walking a tightrope. If you start thinking, how do you do it, you lose time and balance. So to hold on, you just must go ahead and do what you do.
Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
The war in Ukraine is contributing to historic inflation in the United States as it hits a high not seen since the Reagan administration. According to the latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index increased 8.5% for the year that ended last month. That outpaces the elevated reading of 7.9% reported in February, and it's a peak not reached since December of 1981. San Diego County's inflation rate was below the national average in March at 7.9%. While still high, gas prices are slowly dropping. The county-wide average price for a gallon of regular gas fell by about a penny today to $5.81. The average has dropped around 20 cents in the past 2 weeks, and AAA says there is still plenty of room for prices to decrease further. More low-income granny flats could be in San Diego's future after the City Council approved new construction incentives. But as KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayers shows us, there is some skepticism about the plan.
Accessory dwelling units go by a lot of different names: ADUs, casitas, granny flats, or just backyard units. Whatever you call them, the San Diego City Council has approved a new amendment to get more of them built for low-income households by providing incentives to their owners. Daniel Shkolnick is a real estate broker and developer. He's been at the forefront of building ADUs in San Diego.
We can all recognize that San Diego's got a housing shortage, and right now the average timeline to build a multifamily structure takes anywhere from 3 to 4 years. By the time you scout the site, do all the permitting and development, architecture, construction, you're 3 to 4 years from the time you scout to the time you stabilize. That's a really long timeline.
He says ADUs can be built in half the time. Plus, San Diego landowners who build a reduced rent unit can also build a bonus granny flat that can be rented at market rates. The catch is that the rent-restricted unit has to be rented at a reduced rate to moderate-income residents for 15 years, or after the latest amendment, rented for 10 years to low-income tenants. City Council President Sean Elo Rivera led the charge on the amendment. He sees ADUs as a way to address the housing affordability issue in the region.
While we may not see families of 4 or 5 moving into these ADUs, what we will be doing is relieving some of the competitive pressure that those families were feeling by not having these other homes, these new homes on the market, on the rental market.
The most recent amendment builds on Mayor Todd Gloria's Homes for All of Us package, which passed in February. The package somewhat restricted rules for San Diego's ADUs, but LISC San Diego Executive Director Ricardo Flores says the real issue for San Diego's housing crisis comes down to land size and value.
I think ADUs are definitely at the beginning. It's a good start. It's not the end-all be-all, and that any policies that make it more complicated are not good. That we need to provide policies that make it easier. The role of government and local government at this point in time should be, are you following the law? And are you structurally sound?
There are income requirements. Tenants in low-income ADUs must currently earn less than $39,930, which is 60% of the area's median annual income for single-person households. Jacob Ayers, KPBS News.
A legal setback today for the San Diego County Fair. A judge denied the fair's request to stay his ruling, voiding the fair's contract with the Carnival Rides operator. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn has more on what this means.
I think the fair will go on.
That's what Judge Kenneth Meadow told both sides after he denied the San Diego County Fair's motion to stay his ruling. Last week, he issued an injunction voiding the fair's contract with Ray Kamek Shows, or RCS. He said there was enough evidence to suggest the bidding process was rigged. But
this court has not made any definitive or final ruling on the merits of this case.
Fair officials says if the injunction holds, the fair might not happen this year. They say there was not enough time to issue a request for bids for another rides operator. Kevin Alexander is the attorney for the 22nd District Agricultural Association, which oversees the fair.
These RFPs take months and months to prepare, and they take months and months to play through.
John Moot, the attorney who filed the lawsuits on behalf of Tally Amusements, says the district knew about the problem months ago.
This emergency is a problem essentially of their own making. They could have addressed this issue way back at the end of last year.
Moot accuses the 22nd DAA of using stalling tactics, so it could still carry out the contract with RCS. Judge Meadow agrees.
I believe that the public requires integrity from our institutions. We can't allow this to go on year after year after year if those allegations end up being true. And there's a suggestion that they are true at this preliminary stage.
He told both sides to work together to make sure the fair goes on. At its board meeting this afternoon, 22nd DAA Board President Joyce Rowland says it is working to find a solution that complies with the court order.
I want to assure everyone that we're doing everything possible to preserve a full carnival midway at the fair.
At the hearing, Tally agreed as a show of good faith to allow fair officials to use RCS ticketing system to sell carnival tickets.
We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's not what this has ever been about. It's been about justice. It's about integrity in our public institutions.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
For more than 100 years, San Diegans who live in single-family homes haven't had to pay for trash pickup. But a new poll suggests voters might be willing to change that and support a ballot measure that would repeal the so-called People's Ordinance. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregeser says one thing especially appeals to voters.
That's free replacement of trash bins. San Diegans' trash bins are frequently broken by trash trucks. As a KPBS investigation back in 2019 found, San Diegans ordered more than 17,000 replacement bins in just 1 year.
People don't like the fact that they feel they get nickel and dimed when their trash can breaks, and they call the city, and the city says, well, yeah, you can purchase another one. And they're like, purchase? What's this about?
Mike Zuquette is the general manager of the city's white-collar employee union. The San Diego Municipal Employees Association paid for a poll that found people are far more likely to support paying a fee for trash collection when you include the provision to, quote, provide free containers for curbside pickup. In fact, it added 9 points to the overall support for the measure.
And just anecdotally, any council member, or particularly council staff, can tell you that, in terms of constituent services, this is sort of a sore spot with a lot of constituents who don't like being charged for a trash can when they feel like it should be part of trash service.
Of course, the trash cans wouldn't technically be free. People would be paying a monthly fee for trash collection. But Zuquette says the poll makes that clear.
And nobody's trying to pull any punches here. In the language in the poll, we said very clearly that this would allow the city to charge to recover the cost of trash collection, and that included in that cost would be quote unquote free trash cans.
The poll found overall that voters support the measure by a 14-point margin, and there was no significant difference in support between northern and southern neighborhoods. Already, people in apartments and condos have to pay for trash pickup. The hope, Zuquette says, is that people in single-family homes will support the measure. That's in part why they'd include the language about the free trash bins. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
If approved by the City Council, the measure would appear on the November ballot.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, with inflation on the rise, a report on why some corporations are reporting record profits. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
We have our first look at how e-cigarettes can affect health in the long term. E-cigarettes alter the inflammatory state of multiple organs, according to a new study from UC San Diego. Researchers looked at the pod-based e-cigarette brand Juul and its two most popular flavors. They found that daily use of Juul devices increased inflammation in the brain and colon. Researchers say this raises major concerns as inflammation in the brain is linked to anxiety, depression, and addictive behaviors. It is Black Maternal Health Week, and for many expectant mothers in communities of color, the challenge of raising and caring for their young ones is a uniquely difficult one. Amanda Sansoni shows us how one organization is working to change that.
When Jalessa McCoy found out she was pregnant,
I was very scared about what to expect.
She discovered getting the prenatal care she needed in Washington, D.C. wasn't easy.
I didn't have a car, so if I would have had to go to a appointment, I would have had to use a bus. And I did that one time, and that was a long trip.
The eastern half of the nation's capital, home to more than 300,000 people, the majority people of color, lacks adequate access to obstetrical care.
When you look at D.C., D.C. is the shape of a diamond. The top half of the diamond has all of the hospitals, and the lower half of the diamond does not. If a birthing person has a baby, it's about a 2.5-hour bus ride to get to care at the top of the diamond.
7 million Americans of childbearing age live where there is no or limited access to maternity care, which can lead to devastating outcomes for pregnant people.
It's painful. It's absolutely painful.
A February report released by the CDC reveals the maternal death rate for Black women in 2020 was 2.9 times the rate for white women. It's even higher in Washington.
We're just seeing the rippled effects of all of the previous damage that has occurred in this country and how it plays out to now.
But local organizations are working to improve those outcomes.
This is actually the only freestanding birth center in the District of Columbia.
Community of Hope is a critical resource for local families.
Community of Hope provides a wide range of services for moms and babies, both in the prenatal stage as well as during birth and after birth.
The nonprofit also provides housing, transportation, and mental health support to this historically underserved region.
The communities that we tend to work in, there are a lot of stressors. Again, housing instability, economic instability, anxiety, a long history of racist policies and implicit bias and microaggressions.
But the issues impacting Black maternal and infant health are complicated and systemic.
This is such a multifactorial problem that it's going to take a lot of different entities to really make change.
The Biden White House has made addressing the crisis a key domestic priority.
It is clear a healthy economy requires healthy mothers and healthy babies.
While just a few miles away,
motherhood is hectic, but a fun hectic.
A new mom and her baby girl are proof of what access to support and care can do.
Watching her grow is probably the one thing that I'm looking forward to the most.
In Washington, I'm Amanda Sansoni.
A settlement has been reached to address the long-running problem of polluted water and trash flowing across the border into the United States. That resolves a 2018 lawsuit filed by the cities of San Diego, Imperial Beach, and Chula Vista, among others. The U.S. International Boundary and Water Commission has agreed to several terms, including building another temporary berm to stop flows and removing trash from the Tijuana River flood control channel. The settlement is pending the implementation of the EPA's $300 million plan to reduce cross-border pollution.
We're looking at a little bit of a warming trend here in the days to come across Southern California. Calmer winds along with that, especially as we move into tomorrow and Thursday, and also watching another storm potential for next weekend. But this one does not quite look like it's going to get into Southern California, but it will likely bring in some more rain to Central and Northern California. We'll continue to keep a close eye on that moving forward. Temperatures for you on Tuesday night get back down into the low 40s in Oceanside, 30s in Escondido, Escondido, getting down to 32 in Ramona, 42 for you out towards El Cajon. Snapshot for your Wednesday. It's still a little bit of a chilly day, but it's not quite as cold as, say, Tuesday. It's cold by April standards, though, and there's still some lingering precipitation across northern California. We're looking at temperatures getting back into the upper 60s for you in San Diego. Same thing in El Cajon. 66 out towards Ramona, mid to upper 70s for you in Borrego Springs. And then by Thursday, that's when we really start to feel a little bit more in the way of that warmth. The dryness continues across Southern California, but again, you'll notice there's more in the way of rain getting down all the way into the Bay region. So that's about as far south as the rain is going to get for you on Thursday. Near the coast, temperatures really hover in the upper 60s to about 70 degrees as we go through the next couple of days. Not a lot of change, but it is a little bit of a warming trend here, and we should see a little bit more in the way of sunshine over the next couple of days. Further inland, temperatures do warm up a little bit more here. We get up into the low to mid 70s over the next several days here. Should see a mix of sunshine and clouds, no real rain here in the forecast. In the mountains, temperatures here going from the 50s to maybe the 60s by the time we get towards the end of the weekend. A little bit of a breeze picking up there as we move towards Saturday of this coming weekend. And in the deserts, temperatures here going from the mid to upper 70s for you on Wednesday into the mid to upper 80s by Friday and Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
A lab on the San Diego State campus is working on a way to figure out if there are molecular traces of life on Mars. It's part of NASA's Mars mission to land on the planet and examine its rocks and soil and maybe answer the ultimate question of whether we are alone in the universe. KPBS science and technology reporter Thomas Fudge has the story.
The samples to move faster.
PhD student Jessica Torres in a chemistry lab at San Diego State shows me a tiny glass tube she uses to sort through molecules. She can tell by their movement what kind they are and whether they are biological. Ultimately, she hopes to see those signs of life in material gathered from Mars. And where might you find those life signs on the surface of Mars where there's no water, punishing solar rays, and a high salt content?
It's going to be a very harsh environment. So if there was life to be detected on Mars, it likely would be in porous rocks or on the underside of rocks, somewhere that's kind of shielded from like the harsh environment that is Mars.
The work in this lab could ultimately prove that there is life or was life on at least one other planet in the universe. That's something that we have imagined. It's something we've assumed, but it's never been proven.
Analytical chemistry professor Chris Harrison manages the lab, and he's Torres's advisor.
We're looking at the building block molecules that make life function, so specifically amino acids. And these are like little Lego blocks that you assemble them in the right sequence and you get different proteins or enzymes and the functional components of cells.
The glass tube they use to try to sort out the life-building molecules has a channel more narrow than a human hair. Molecules pass through it at different speeds, depending on their size and their electric charge. And that race through the tube can determine whether you are looking at, say, an amino acid. NASA has been successfully landing on Mars since the 1970s, and the first images from the planet showed a perfectly barren landscape. But eventually they did find evidence of old riverbeds likely formed by past water flows. We also have learned that Mars has a thin atmosphere, shown by this drone landing on the planet. Today, the Mars rover Perseverance is up there. It's parked on one of those dried-up river deltas, hoping to collect sedimentary rocks that show signs of life. Michael Meyer is NASA's lead scientist for the Mars Exploration Program. He says if we find proof that life once existed on Mars, that could change our conception of life in the universe.
What is life? What do we know? All we know is us, right? We have one example. As any scientist, one example is not enough to constitute a way to understand the totality of what life is.
Finding proof of life on Mars could demonstrate that there's nothing unique about life on Earth, that in fact the creation of life is just a natural part of a planet's physical and chemical evolution.
As an example, if you have volcanoes and you have water and you have these elements, given enough time, life will start. It could be that easy. We don't know.
The human relationship with the Martians we imagine dates back to the 19th century. That's when H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds. Science fiction author and NASA consultant David Brin says Mars is one of the logical places to look for life.
I think that if we find life elsewhere, it'll be basically a pretty cool thing. And the number one candidate is not Mars right at this moment, or even the clouds of Venus, which really recently were topics, but the 10 ice-roofed water worlds we know we have in the solar system now.
He's talking about, for example, Saturn's moon Titan and Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, moons that are known to have or believed to have liquid oceans.
Now, let's say we find that life did evolve on its own elsewhere. Well, that suggests that life is everywhere in the cosmos, just bloody everywhere. And that's what I believe to be the case.
Astronomy has also identified 5,000 planets that exist in other solar systems, so the possibilities are great. But for now, we're just looking at what may exist on our next-door planetary neighbor, Mars. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
A first-of-its-kind zero-waste grocery store is now open in North Park. The Mighty Bin offers reusable and package-free products. You can bring your own containers and totes to fill up or grab one there. There's even a membership allowing you to bring your compostable food scraps to the store, and they'll compost it for you. The store's owner hopes it will encourage people to take steps to lower their carbon footprint.
I feel like there's so much chaos and we kind of feel helpless on what we can do to help. And the biggest thing is to focus on your individual habits, because if a million people focus on themselves, you know, we could really make a difference.
The owner says she hopes to expand to other neighborhoods in San Diego. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.